What is stress? Stress, at its core, is a generalized system. It wasn't designed for tigers attacking us or people attacking us. It's a system to mobilize other systems in the brain and body. It wasn't designed for one thing. And that gives it a certain advantage in taking over the state of our brain and body, but it also gives you, all of us, an advantage in controlling it because it's based on hardwired biological mechanisms, and there are hardwired biological mechanisms, meaning cells and chemicals and pathways and tissues that exist in you right now that require no neural plasticity that allow you to put a brake on stress. And so we're going to talk about those. Let's be clear about what we already know, which is that stressors can be psychological or they can be physical. Okay? If I put you outside on a cold day without a jacket for a very long time, that is stressful. If I have you prepare for too many exams at once and you can't balance it all with your sleep schedule and your other needs for comfort and well-being like food, rest, sleep, and social connection, that is stressful. So what happens when the stress response hits? You have a collection of neurons that start right about at your neck and run down to about your navel, a little bit lower, and those are called the sympathetic chain ganglia. When something stresses us out, either in our mind or because something enters our environment, that chain of neurons becomes activated like a bunch of dominoes falling all at once. It's very fast. When those neurons are activated, acetylcholine is released, but there's some other neurons for the aficionados out there. They're called the postganglionic neurons. Those ones respond to that acetylcholine, and then they release epinephrine, which is the equivalent to adrenaline. So we have this system where very fast, whenever we're stressed, the core of our body, these neurons down the middle of our body, release these chemicals, and then there's adrenaline, or epinephrine, released at particular organs and acts in particular ways. Some things like the muscles of your legs and your heart and other things that need to be active when you're stressed, they have a certain kind of receptor, which is called the beta receptor. And that beta receptor responds to epinephrine and blood vessels dilate. They get bigger and blood rushes into our legs. The heart rate speeds up. Lots of things happen that get activated. And at the same time, that epinephrine activates other receptors on certain tissues that we don't need, the ones involved in digestion, reproduction, and things of that sort that are luxuries for when things are going well, not things to pay attention to when we're stressed. So the stress response is two-pronged. It's a yes for certain things, and it's a no, you may not right now for other things. That's why you feel blood in certain organs and tissues of your body, but not in others. But basically, you are activated in ways that support you moving. And that's because fundamentally, the stress response is just this generic thing that says, do something. You're going to feel agitated, and that's because it was designed to move you. So this is important because if you want to control stress, you need to learn how to work with that agitation. Medium-term stress is going to be stress that lasts anywhere from several days to several weeks. What is stress threshold? Well, stress threshold is actually our ability to cognitively regulate what's going on in our body. A lot of stress inoculation, a lot of managing medium-term stress on the time scale of weeks or maybe even a couple months. So we're not talking about years of stress. A lot of that has to do with raising our stress threshold. It's about capacity. And there are very simple tools, excellent tools that will allow us to modulate our capacity for stress. And they look a lot like the tools I just described. They involve placing oneself deliberately into a situation where our adrenaline is increased somewhat, not to the extreme. And then when we feel flooded with adrenaline, and normally we would panic, it's about cognitively, mentally, emotionally calming ourselves and being comfortable with that response in our body. And what would this look like? You can use the cyclic hyperoxygenation breathing to combat infection if you're feeling kind of run down. And there's also a way in which you can use things like cold showers, or if you exercise and you bring your heart rate up very high, you kind of go into that high intensity realm where your heart is beating a little bit harder than you're comfortable with. The key in those moments is to learn to relax the mind while the body is very activated. One way that you can do this, and this is kind of fun, if it's approved by your physician and you're able to do this, you can bring your heart rate up. You could do this through an ice bath if that's your thing, or a cold shower, or cyclic oxygenation breathing, or you could sprint, or you could go hard on the bike. Whatever it is that brings your heart rate up. And then what you want to do is you want to actually try and calm the mind while your body is in this heightened state of activation. When we are stressed, our pupils dilate. The effect of that pupil dilation is to create tunnel vision. It literally narrows our view of the visual world. We no longer see in panorama. And there's some other effects as well, but that's because the visual system through this cranial nerve system that I described before is tethered and is part of this autonomic nervous system. By deliberately dilating your gaze, meaning not moving your head and eyes around, but by deliberately going from tunnel vision to broader panoramic vision, literally seeing more of your environment all at once, it creates a calming effect on the mind because it releases a particular circuit in the brainstem that's associated with alertness, aka stress. Now, this is very powerful. If you're running, for instance, and you're at max capacity or close to it, or you're kind of hitting like 80, 90% of maximum on the bike, and you dilate your gaze, what you'll find is the mind can relax while the body is in full output. And this is relates to work that in various communities, people are working with this in the sports community, military communities, etc. But it's a form not really of stress inoculation. It's more about raising stress threshold so that the body is going to continue to be in a high alertness, high reactivity mode, high output, but the mind is calm. And so this isn't about unifying mind and body. This is actually about using body to bring up your level of activation, then dissociating, not the clinical dissociation kind of disorders, but dissociating the mental or emotional response from what's going on in your body. And over time, so if you do this, a couple times, you don't have to do this every workout, but if you do this maybe once a week or so, you start being comfortable at these higher activation states. What once felt overwhelming and like a lot of work now is manageable. It feels tolerable. So that's for navigating medium-term stress. And then there's long-term stress. Now, long-term stress is bad. You do not want adrenaline up in your system for a very long time. In fact, you ideally, you would have your stress go up various times throughout the day, but it would never stay elevated and it would never prevent you from getting a good night's sleep. We know that chronic stress, elevated stress, and especially in the so-called type A personalities, creates heart disease, leading killer in most every country, but in particular in the U.S. But by no means do you want to be stressed out all the time, chronically, for months and months and months and years on end. The best tools, the best mechanisms that we know to modulate long-term stress might surprise you a little bit. First of all, there are going to be the things that don't surprise you, which is everyone knows getting regular exercise, getting good sleep, using real-time tools to try and tamp down the stress response, etc. That's all going to be really useful. The data really point to the fact that social connection and certain types of social connection in particular are what are going to mitigate or reduce long-term stress. Now, social connection can take many forms. Some of those can be romantic attachments. Those could be familial attachments that are non-romantic, friendship, pets, even attachments to things that just delight us. Having a sense of delight, a sense of really enjoying something that you see and engage in, witness, or participate in, that is associated with the serotonin system. And certainly play is one of those things, social connection of various forms. Those are things to invest in. I'll be the first to admit, social connection and friendship and relationships of all kinds to animals or humans or inanimate objects takes work. It takes investment. It takes time in not needing everything to be exactly the way you want it to be. Social connection is something that we work for, but it is incredibly powerful. Finding just a few people, even one, or an animal, or something that you delight in, believe it or not, has very positive effects on mitigating this long-term stress, on improving various aspects of our life as it relates to stress and emotionality.
Thanks for watching. If you found this information helpful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more health and wellness tips.